He thought walking away would cost him everything, but what happened next changed his life forever. After being humiliated in front of an entire room, Marcus Reed made a choice most people wouldn't dare to make. He chose dignity over survival. But just as he walked away, the most powerful woman in the building ran after him, because she knew the truth he carried could bring everything crashing down. The glass walls of the 42nd floor conference room reflected Manhattan in fragments: gray sky, streaks of rain, the faint blur of yellow taxis crawling through the streets below. Inside, the air felt heavier than the storm outside, thick with the kind of silence that doesn't happen by accident. It happens when something has just gone too far. Marcus Reed stood at the end of the long, polished table, his reflection staring back at him in the dark surface. Tie slightly loosened, shoulders squared, eyes steady in a way that had nothing to do with calm. Around him sat 12 people in tailored suits, each one carefully avoiding his gaze, as if eye contact might make them part of what had just happened. Victor Hale leaned back in his chair like he had all the time in the world. His cufflinks caught the overhead light every time he moved his hands, small flashes of silver that felt louder than anything else in the room. He had just finished speaking, and the echo of his words still hung there, sharp and deliberate. "You have to understand your position, Marcus," Victor had said, his voice smooth, almost patient. "A man in your situation, raising a kid alone, living where you live, you don't get to be difficult. You get opportunities. You take them. You don't question them." No one had interrupted. No one had shifted uncomfortably enough to matter. A few people had glanced down at their laptops, pretending to type, pretending this was just another meeting about projections and timelines. Marcus felt the familiar heat rise in his chest. Not sudden, not explosive, but slow and steady, the kind that builds over years. He had felt it before, in classrooms where teachers assumed he wouldn't understand, in interviews where they smiled a little too tightly, in offices where his ideas were repeated by someone else and suddenly taken seriously. He had learned to swallow it, to let it pass, to stay quiet and keep moving. But something about the way Victor had said it, about Eli, about where he lived, about what he should be grateful for, something about that had crossed a line Marcus had spent years pretending didn't exist. He reached into his jacket pocket. The motion was small, almost invisible, but it drew attention anyway. A few heads lifted. Victor's eyes narrowed slightly, curious now. Marcus pulled out his employee badge. The plastic caught the light the same way Victor's cufflinks had, but there was nothing polished about it. It was scratched at the edges, worn from being clipped on and taken off twice a day, 5 days a week, for months. He looked at it for a moment. This badge had gotten him through security doors, into meetings, into a version of a life he had worked too hard to reach. It had also come with rules, unspoken ones. Keep your head down. Don't push too hard. Know where you stand. He placed it on the table. The sound it made was quiet, too quiet for what it meant. A soft tap against polished wood, but it cut through the room like something heavier. Victor leaned forward slightly now, his smile tightening. "What are you doing?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He let the silence stretch just long enough for everyone in the room to feel it. Then he spoke. "My son," he said, his voice low but clear, "deserves a father who still has his dignity." The words didn't rise. They didn't need to. They landed exactly where they were meant to. For the first time since the meeting started, someone looked directly at him. Just for a second. Then their eyes dropped again. Victor let out a short, humorless laugh. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe," Marcus said. He straightened his jacket, the movement automatic, practiced. The kind of gesture you make when you're about to walk into something uncertain and you need your body to remember what steady feels like. But it's my mistake to make. No one stopped him as he turned. No one called his name. No one said wait. Chairs remained still. Screens stayed open. The machine kept pretending it hadn't just shown its teeth. Marcus walked to the door, his footsteps soft against the carpet, each one carrying him farther from the version of himself that had sat quietly in that room for months. The hallway outside felt colder. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Somewhere down the corridor a phone rang and went unanswered. The building moved on, unaware or unwilling to care that something had just shifted. He reached the elevator and pressed the button. For a moment, he saw his reflection again in the brushed steel doors. Same tie, same suit, same man. But something in his face had changed. Not relief, not yet. Just the absence of something he had been holding for too long. The doors opened. He stepped inside, turned, and pressed the button for the lobby. The doors began to close. 6 inches. 4. 2. A hand shot through the narrowing gap. The doors jerked, then slid back open with a soft mechanical sigh. Marcus blinked. Standing there, slightly out of breath, was Emily Carter. The CEO of Sterling & Vale did not run. Not through hallways, not after people, not for anything that could be handled with a call or a command. She was known for precision, for control, for the kind of composure that made other executives lower their voices when she entered a room. Right now, her hair was slightly out of place, one strand caught against her cheek. Her breathing wasn't uneven, but it wasn't perfectly measured either. And her eyes, sharp, assessing, usually unreadable, were fixed on him in a way that felt different. "Don't go," she said. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just enough to stop him. Marcus stared at her, his hand still hovering near the panel of buttons. "I need to hear the truth," she continued, her voice steadying as she spoke. "From you, not from Roland, not from anyone else in that room." He didn't answer. For a moment, the elevator felt like a space outside of time, halfway between floors, halfway between decisions. Emily took a small step forward, just enough that the doors couldn't close again. "If you walk out right now," she said, "whatever happened in there becomes the version that stays on record." Marcus let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "I already said everything I needed to say," he replied. "Then say it again," she said. "To me." There was no softness in her tone, no sympathy. Just something direct, structural. Like she was offering him a different kind of deal, one that didn't rely on pretending. Marcus glanced past her, down the hallway he had just walked through, then back at the elevator panel, then at her. He thought about Eli, about the way his son looked at him across the kitchen table in the mornings, waiting for answers Marcus didn't always have. About the question he knew was coming. Did you do the right thing? He met Emily's gaze again. The doors were still open. And for the first time since he placed that badge on the table, Marcus wasn't sure if walking away was the only choice he had left. The elevator hummed softly around them, suspended between floors, as the moment stretched just a little longer than it should have. And somewhere deep inside that pause, something shifted. Not in the company, not in the system, but in the possibility that this story wasn't over yet. Marcus didn't answer right away. The elevator doors remained open, held there by Emily's presence, by her insistence, by something neither of them was fully naming yet. For a brief moment, the city felt distant, muted, like the hum of New York had stepped back to watch what he would do next. Then Marcus reached forward and pressed the button for the 42nd floor again. The doors slid shut. They rose in silence. Emily didn't speak. Neither did he. The numbers ticked upward, 38, 39, 40, each one carrying a weight Marcus could feel settling into his chest. He wasn't going back because he trusted the system. He wasn't even sure he trusted her. He was going back because of one thing: Eli. The doors opened again, and Marcus stepped out without waiting for her. The hallway looked exactly the same, but something about it felt altered, like a stage reset for a second act no one had planned. 48th floor, Emily said behind him. Private conference room. He paused, then nodded once. No more words. They walked in opposite directions, she toward the executive elevators, him toward the stairwell. He didn't want the polished ride up with her. He needed the space, the climb. The stairwell door shut behind him with a hollow metal echo. For a second, Marcus just stood there, hand on the railing, staring at the concrete steps spiraling upward. Then he started climbing. 1 floor. 2. His breathing deepened, not from the effort, but from the release of everything he had been holding back for months. Each step felt like shedding something: expectation, pressure, the quiet compromises he had made just to stay afloat. By the time he reached the 48th floor, his chest was tight, but his mind was clearer. He pushed the door open. The executive hallway was different from the floors below. Quieter, carpet thicker, lighting softer, warmer. It smelled faintly of polished wood and something expensive he couldn't name. The conference room Emily had mentioned sat at the end, glass walls tinted just enough to blur the inside. He hesitated. Then he walked in. The next morning, long before the city woke, Marcus was already up. 5:03 a.m. The numbers on the stove clock glowed faint blue in the dim kitchen. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that only existed before sunrise, before traffic, before the world started asking for anything. Marcus stood at the counter in a worn gray t-shirt, slicing an apple with slow, careful movements. The knife tapped lightly against the cutting board, a steady rhythm that filled the silence. The kitchen wasn't much: narrow, outdated cabinets, a fridge that hummed louder than it should. But it was clean. Everything had its place. It had to. Across the room, Eli's backpack leaned against the wall, one strap twisted, a math worksheet sticking out from the front pocket. A pair of sneakers sat beside it, one slightly ahead of the other, like he had kicked them off mid-step the night before. Marcus glanced at them, then back at the apple. He moved with quiet efficiency. Turkey sandwich, whole wheat bread, folded just right. Apple slices packed neatly into a small container. A juice box, a granola bar. Routine. It was the only thing in his life that didn't shift under his feet. He reached for a small square of paper. The notes started 2 years ago, back when things had first begun to crack, when Eli had asked one too many questions Marcus didn't know how to answer. Now, it was just what they did. Marcus picked up a pen. He stared at the blank paper for a moment longer than usual. Then he wrote, "Keep going. I'm proud of you." He folded it carefully, twice, then once more until it formed a small triangle. Eli had liked it that way the first time Marcus did it. Said it felt like a secret. Marcus slipped the note into the lunchbox. For a second, his hand lingered there. Then he closed it. Eli shuffled into the kitchen 10 minutes later, hair messy, eyes still heavy with sleep. He dragged his feet across the floor, one hand clutching the edge of his t-shirt. "Morning," Marcus said quietly. Eli nodded, climbing onto the chair at the small table. He didn't ask questions, not right away. He never did. Marcus placed the plate in front of him. Scrambled eggs, toast. Eli picked up his fork, then paused. "You home early?" he said. Marcus leaned against the counter, arms crossed loosely. "Yeah." "Everything okay?" The question was simple, casual, but Marcus felt it land. Eli wasn't looking at him directly. He was focused on his plate, pushing the eggs around slightly, waiting. Marcus watched him. This was the moment, the one he had been thinking about since the elevator, since the badge, since everything tilted. He could say it was fine. He could say work was busy, that nothing had changed. Eli would believe him. That was the problem. Marcus exhaled slowly. "I had a rough day," he said. Eli nodded, still not looking up. "Okay." Another pause. Then Eli glanced at him, just briefly. "You still did the right thing?" Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. There it was. Not what happened. Not, "Are we okay?" Just that. "You still did the right thing?" Marcus straightened slightly. "Yeah," he said. Eli held his gaze for a second, searching, measuring. Then he nodded once, satisfied. "Okay." He went back to his breakfast like the matter was settled, like the answer had confirmed something he already believed. Marcus turned away, reaching for the coffee pot, but his hand paused just above it. He stood there for a moment, staring at nothing. Then he poured the coffee. Outside, the sky was just beginning to lighten, a soft gray pushing back against the darkness. The city would wake soon. Bills would still be there. Rent would still be due. The job, whatever it was now, would still be uncertain. But for the first time since yesterday, Marcus felt something shift. Not relief. Not yet. Just a quiet, steady certainty. Whatever came next, he would not have to lie to his son about it, and that, somehow, was enough to take the next step. By the time Marcus stepped back into Sterling and Vale later that morning, the building felt different. It wasn't louder or quieter. The same polished floors reflected the same overhead lights. The same security desk nodded him through with the same rehearsed indifference. But there was something in the air now, something subtle, like a shift in pressure before a storm. People knew. Maybe not everything, maybe not the details, but they had heard enough. Rumors traveled faster than elevators in a place like this. Marcus walked past the reception area, his shoes sinking slightly into the thick carpet, each step measured, controlled. Conversations didn't stop when he passed. They just softened. Voices dropped half a level. Laughter faded a little too quickly. No one said his name. He reached his desk. His computer was still on from the day before. The screen had dimmed into a dark mirror, reflecting his face back at him, tired but steady. Marcus sat down. For a moment, he didn't touch anything. Then he moved the mouse. The screen flickered to life. Emails, dozens of them. Some marked urgent, some flagged, some copied to him, others not. Threads he should have been included in, but wasn't. Conversations that had moved on without him, like he had already disappeared. He scrolled slowly. There it was, the Maison Orla project folder. Still open, still active, still moving forward as if nothing had happened. Marcus clicked it. The spreadsheets loaded, rows and columns stretching across the screen like a grid of decisions already made. Numbers filled every cell. Projected growth, projected revenue, projected risk, projected lies. He leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the desk. He had seen it before. 3 weeks ago, the first time something felt off. Back then, it had been small, a percentage that didn't line up, a projection that felt too optimistic, a number that seemed rounded in a way real data rarely was. He had told himself it was nothing. Then he checked again, and again. And suddenly it wasn't small anymore. Now, looking at it again, the discrepancies felt louder, clearer, like once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. 30% inflation on projected growth. Risk models that skipped entire categories, regulatory exposure, supply chain volatility, market saturation. And then there was the vendor line. Harrove Strategic Solutions. Marcus clicked into the budget breakdown. The payments were there, clean, structured, professional. Too clean. He opened another tab and pulled up the vendor registry. Harrove Strategic Solutions, recorded 14 months ago. No website, no public-facing information, just an address. Marcus copied it, pasted it into a search. The results came up instantly. A small consulting firm, private, minimal footprint, and listed under directors, Dale Whitmore. Marcus sat back in his chair. The name didn't mean anything at first. Then it clicked. Victor's brother-in-law. The realization didn't hit like a shock. It settled in slowly, like something heavy lowering into place. This wasn't sloppy. It wasn't careless. It was designed. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. He could feel the edges of the situation tightening around him. He had seen this before. Different company, different people, same pattern. You notice something, you speak up, and suddenly you're the problem. He opened his eyes and leaned forward again. If he was going to do this, if he was going to step back into that room upstairs and say it again, like Emily had asked, he needed more than instinct. He needed proof. Marcus began pulling files, original projections, revised versions, email threads, timestamps. He worked methodically, quietly, like he always did. Every number had a source. Every source had a trail. And trails, if you followed them far enough, always led somewhere. An hour passed, then another. The office around him filled in slowly, people arriving, settling in, starting their day. The low hum of keyboards, printers, distant conversations. No one came to his desk. No one asked what he was doing. But he could feel it, the glances, the awareness. Marcus ignored it. He kept working. He opened the document history on the main proposal file, versions control, timestamps, edits. He scanned through them, his eyes moving quickly now, faster as the pattern began to emerge. Changes made late at night. Numbers adjusted without corresponding notes. Risk sections shortened. Large softened. He pulled up building access logs from memory. He didn't have direct access, but he knew how the system worked. If he could match the document edits to times when people were or weren't in the building, Marcus paused. He clicked into another file, then another. And then he saw it. A timestamp, 11:42 p.m., 2 nights ago. A modification to the budget file. Marcus leaned back slowly. He hadn't been here that night. He knew that for a fact. He had been home, helping Eli with homework, sitting at the kitchen table while his son struggled through fractions and laughed when he got them wrong. Marcus looked at the screen again. 11:42 p.m. His credentials, used to access and modify the file. A slow, cold realization moved through him. This wasn't just corruption. This was a setup. He sat there for a long moment, the noise of the office fading into the background. Then he reached for his phone. He didn't call anyone. He opened the Notes app, and he started writing. Time. First. Change. Page. He was building a case against him. He would build one back. Listen by line, fact by fact. No assumptions, no emotion, just the truth. Marcus set the phone down and looked at the screen one more time. Somewhere in this building, Victor Hale was already moving pieces into place. And upstairs, on the 48th floor, Emily Carter was waiting to hear the truth. Marcus exhaled slowly. The step he had taken in that elevator, the one he thought was about walking away, it wasn't. It was about stepping into something bigger, something messier, something that was going to cost more than just a job. He closed the file, stood up, and for the first time since placing that badge on the table, Marcus understood exactly what he was walking into. Not just a fight for his career, but a fight for the truth itself. And in a place like this, the truth was the most dangerous thing in the room. Marcus stood there for a moment after closing the file, his reflection faintly visible in the darkened monitor. The office noise pressed back in around him, phones ringing, chairs shifting, someone laughing too loudly near the break area. Normal. Everything looked normal. That was the part that always got him. He picked up his jacket from the back of his chair, slid it on, and grabbed his laptop. The weight of it felt heavier than usual, like it was carrying more than just data now. It was carrying a decision. He walked toward the elevators again, this time without hesitation. The ride up to the 48th floor was quiet, empty except for the low hum of machinery and the faint vibration beneath his feet. The mirrored walls reflected him from every angle, one man multiplied, each version carrying the same question. How far are you willing to take this? The doors opened. The executive floor greeted him with its usual calm. Soft lighting, clean lines, silence that felt curated, like even sound had to earn its place here. Marcus stepped out. At the end of the hallway, the conference room door stood slightly open. He pushed it wider. Emily Carter was already inside. She stood by the window, hands lightly resting on the back of a chair, her posture straight but not rigid. The city stretched out behind her, blocks and avenues layered into the distance, gray sky hanging low over everything. She turned when she heard him enter. "Close the door," she said. He did. The soft click echoed more than it should have. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Marcus walked to the table and set his laptop down. He didn't sit. Emily studied him, not casually, not politely. It was the kind of look that measured, weighed, decided. "You said the numbers were wrong," she said. "Show me." No small talk, no reassurance. Marcus nodded once. He opened the laptop, pulled up the files, and turned the screen toward her. "The growth projections are inflated," he began, his voice steady. 30 to 40% above what the actual data supports. Emily stepped closer, her eyes scanning the screen. "Based on what?" she asked. Marcus clicked into another file. Historical performance, market comparisons, internal reports from the last 3 quarters. They don't match what's being presented. She didn't interrupt. Marcus moved through the data, each click deliberate, each explanation precise. "The risk model is incomplete," he continued. "It leaves out regulatory exposure and supply chain volatility, both standard for a deal this size." Emily's brow tightened slightly. "And this," Marcus said, pulling up the budget breakdown, This is where it stops being a mistake. He highlighted the vendor line. Herov Strategic Solutions. Emily leaned in closer. No deliverables attached, Marcus said. No documentation supporting these payments, just recurring transfers. How much? She asked. Just under 2 million so far, spread across multiple entries. Emily's gaze sharpened. Who owns it? Marcus hesitated for half a second. Then he said it. Dale Whitmore. Emily straightened slightly. That name should mean something to me. It does, Marcus replied. He's Victor Hale's brother-in-law. The room went still. Not dramatically, not loudly, just still. Emily turned her attention back to the screen, her expression tightening in a way Marcus hadn't seen before. Not anger, not yet. Something more controlled. How long have you known? She asked. 3 weeks, Marcus said. And you reported it? I filed through the compliance portal, twice. No one followed up? No, Emily nodded slowly, like she was placing pieces into a structure she had been building in her head. Marcus clicked into another file. There's more, he said. She looked at him. Marcus pulled up the document history. These files were modified 2 nights ago, he said. 11:42 p.m. Emily glanced at the timestamp. You were here? No, Marcus said. I was at home. Emily's eyes lifted from the screen. My credentials were used, he continued, but I wasn't in the building. For the first time, something shifted in her expression. Not surprise. Recognition. Show me, she said. Marcus pulled up the access logs he had pieced together. Building access is on a separate system, he explained. Badge records will show I left at 6:18 p.m. that day. Emily folded her arms. And you're saying someone used your credentials after that? Yes. To change the files? Yes. And make it look like you did it? Marcus met her gaze. Yes. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Emily turned away from the table and walked back toward the window. She stood there for a moment, looking out over the city, her reflection faint against the glass. Marcus watched her, not speaking. He had said his part. Now it was hers. After a few seconds, she spoke. If what you're saying is true, she said slowly, then this isn't just a bad proposal. Marcus didn't respond. It's fraud, she finished. The word hung in the air. Marcus felt it settle into place. Yes, he said. Emily turned back toward him. And if it's fraud, she continued, then anyone who signed off on it is exposed. Marcus nodded. Including you, he added quietly. She didn't flinch. I'm aware. Another pause. Then she stepped closer to the table again. Why didn't you walk away? She asked. Marcus frowned slightly. You tried, she clarified. Yesterday. You could have left, found another job, started over. Marcus glanced down at the laptop, then back at her. Because my name would still be on it, he said. Emily studied him. And that matters to you? Marcus didn't hesitate. Yes. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded once. Good, she said. Marcus wasn't sure what he expected. That wasn't it. Emily reached for the laptop and adjusted it slightly, her fingers moving across the trackpad as she reviewed the files again, faster this time, sharper. Then she closed it. We have 48 hours, she said. Marcus blinked. For what? For this to either disappear, she said, or become something no one can ignore. Marcus felt a tension tighten in his chest. "And which one do you think it will be?" he asked. Emily met his eyes. "That depends," she said, "on how far you're willing to go." Marcus exhaled slowly. He thought about Eli, about the kitchen table, about the question. "You still did the right thing?" He looked back at her. "I already crossed that line," he said. Emily nodded slightly. "Then we move forward," she said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. "I'm initiating an internal review," she continued. "All project files, all budget records, everything. I want IT security involved. And I want direct access to the raw data." Marcus's brow tightened. "Victor won't sit still," he said. Emily's lips pressed into a thin line. "No," she agreed, "he won't." She slipped the phone back into her pocket. "And neither will we." Marcus picked up his laptop. For the first time since this started, he felt something shift again. Not just pressure, not just risk, momentum. But as he turned toward the door, something else moved beneath it. A quieter thought. Victor had built this, carefully, over time. And men like Victor didn't lose quietly. Marcus paused with his hand on the door. "You should be ready," he said without turning around. Emily's voice came from behind him, calm and certain. "I always am." Marcus stepped out into the hallway. The door closed behind him. And somewhere else in the building, without him knowing it, Victor Hale was already beginning to move. It didn't happen loudly. There was no announcement, no warning, no sudden shift that anyone could point to and say, "That's when everything changed." It happened quietly. Emails that didn't get sent. Meetings Marcus wasn't invited to. A subtle rearranging of conversations, like furniture being moved in the dark. By late afternoon, the office felt different again. Not just aware of Marcus now, but cautious. He noticed it first when he walked past the glass-walled breakout room near the center of the floor. Two analysts who usually nodded at him went still for half a second before looking back down at their screens. Not guilty, not even unfriendly. Just careful. Marcus kept walking. He had seen this pattern before. It didn't matter what the truth was. It mattered who told the story first. And Victor was already telling it. At 4:12 p.m., Marcus received a meeting request. Support line, Project Alignment Review, mandatory attendance. Organizer, Victor Hale. Marcus stared at it for a moment. He didn't need to open it to know what it was. The room, the audience, the stage. He clicked accept. The conference room was fuller than usual when he walked in. More than just the core team, directors, senior analysts, even someone from finance who rarely attended operational reviews. 12 chairs had become 18. Victor stood at the head of the table, sleeves rolled just enough to suggest effort, not enough to lose authority. A presentation was already pulled up on the screen behind him. Clean slides, clean fonts, clean lies. Marcus took a seat near the end. No one greeted him. Victor glanced up as Marcus entered, offering a thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Glad you could make it," he said. Marcus didn't respond. The meeting began. Victor moved through the slides with practiced ease. Growth projections, market positioning, partnership benefits. His voice was steady, confident, the kind that made people stop questioning and start agreeing. Marcus watched the room. Heads nodded, notes were taken. Everything moved forward like it was already decided. Then Victor paused, just long enough to shift the rhythm. "And before we finalize," he said, turning slightly toward Marcus, There's a small internal matter we should address. The air in the room tightened. Marcus felt it immediately. Victor clicked to the next slide. A single line appeared on the screen. Unauthorized file access, internal review pending. A few people shifted in their seats. Victor clasped his hands loosely in front of him. Over the past 48 hours, he continued, we've identified irregular access to sensitive project files. Marcus didn't move, didn't speak. Victor's gaze settled on him. Specifically, he said, files related to the Maison Orla proposal were accessed and modified outside of standard hours, using internal credentials. The room went still. Not shocked, just still. Marcus could feel the weight of it settling around him. Victor stepped closer to the table. Now, he said, his tone softening slightly, we understand that pressure can lead to poor decisions. A few eyes flicked toward Marcus, then away. Victor tilted his head just slightly, like he was offering understanding. A man juggling financial stress, he continued, raising a child on his own, trying to keep everything together. Marcus felt the words hit, one by one, carefully placed. Not loud enough to be called out, but sharp enough to cut. It's not hard to imagine, Victor went on, how someone might feel desperate enough to cross a line. There it was. Not an accusation, not directly, just a suggestion. Marcus slowly lifted his gaze, met Victor's eyes. The room waited. Victor smiled faintly. I think it's important, he said, that we address this transparently. Marcus leaned forward slightly. Then let's be transparent, he said. The room shifted again. Victor's smile didn't fade. Of course, he said. Marcus stood. No rush, no sudden movement, just steady. You're implying I accessed those files, Marcus said, at night, without authorization. Victor lifted one shoulder slightly. The logs speak for themselves. Marcus nodded. They do, he said. He reached down and opened his laptop. The small click echoed louder than it should have. He turned the screen toward the room. Then let's look at all of them, he said. Victor's expression didn't change, but something behind it tightened. Marcus navigated quickly, pulling up the same data he had shown Emily earlier. Here's the timestamp you're referring to, he said, pointing. 11:42 p.m. File modification. He clicked again. And here's building access, he continued. Separate system, separate server. The room leaned in, almost unconsciously. Marcus highlighted the line. I badged out at 6:18 p.m., he said. Didn't return that night. A murmur moved through the room. Victor's jaw tightened just slightly. Marcus didn't stop. You're building a narrative, he said, his voice still calm. That I manipulated files to cover something up. Victor's voice cut in, smooth but sharper now. I'm presenting facts. No, Marcus said. You're presenting part of them. He straightened. And leaving out the part where the numbers in this proposal are already wrong. The room went silent. Victor's eyes hardened. That's a serious accusation, he said. So is yours, Marcus replied. A beat. Then Victor stepped forward, closer now. You need to think carefully, he said quietly, about where you're going with this. Marcus held his ground. I already have, he said. Victor's gaze flicked briefly around the room, measuring, calculating. Then he smiled again. That's unfortunate, he said. He turned back toward the group. I think we all understand what we're dealing with here, he said. A situation that requires careful handling. Marcus felt it. The shift. The room pulling away from him. Not because they believed Victor, but because it was safer. Victor clasped his hands again. In the meantime, he added, I recommend we proceed with the project as planned. Marcus stared at him. And in that moment, he understood something clearly. This wasn't about winning the room. Not today. Victor had already positioned it, framed it, controlled it. Marcus closed his laptop slowly. The sound seemed louder now. Final. He looked around the table, at the faces that wouldn't meet his eyes, at the people who knew something wasn't right, but chose silence anyway. Then he spoke. My son asked me something this morning, he said. Victor frowned slightly. Marcus didn't look at him. He asked me if I was still telling the truth, Marcus continued. The room stayed quiet. I told him yes. Marcus lifted his gaze again, and I'm not changing that answer in here. He picked up his laptop. No dramatic exit, no raised voice, just a decision. Marcus turned and walked toward the door. This time, no one tried to stop him. Victor didn't call after him. The room didn't move. Because this time, they all knew exactly what had just happened. Not a misunderstanding, not a mistake. A line had been drawn, and Marcus had stepped across it. The hallway felt colder than before, but also clearer. Behind him, the meeting continued. Voices resumed, slides moved forward. The machine kept running. Marcus walked toward the elevators again. But this time, he didn't hesitate. He didn't look back. Because whatever came next, it wasn't going to be decided in that room anymore. Marcus stepped out of the building into the late afternoon drizzle, the kind that didn't fall hard enough to notice at first, but soaked through your jacket before you realized it. The city moved around him in its usual rhythm, taxis honking, people weaving through crosswalks, umbrellas blooming open like dark flowers. No one knew what had just happened upstairs. No one cared. Marcus pulled his jacket tighter and started walking. He didn't check his phone, didn't look back. The glass tower behind him reflected the gray sky, giving nothing away. His steps were steady, but his mind wasn't. 48 hours. That was what Emily had said. 48 hours to either expose something real or get buried by it. Marcus exhaled slowly as he turned onto a side street, away from the main rush. The sidewalks narrowed here, storefronts older, signs faded. The smell of food from a corner deli mixed with the damp scent of rain and pavement. For a moment, he thought about going straight home, seeing Eli, sitting at the kitchen table like nothing had shifted. But something in him resisted that. Not yet. He needed space. He kept walking. The bus stop sat at the edge of the block, half covered by a rusted metal shelter. The glass panels were streaked with water and old grime, graffiti etched faintly into the corners. A flickering advertisement screen cast a pale blue glow over everything, making the rain look colder than it already was. A handful of people stood scattered around. A man in a construction jacket scrolling through his phone, a woman with grocery bags at her feet. A teenager with headphones, head down, lost somewhere else. Marcus slowed as he approached, and then he saw her. She stood just outside the shelter, not under it, no umbrella, no coat suited for the weather. Her clothes were expensive. He could tell that even at a glance. But something about her didn't fit. She wasn't dressed for the rain or the street. Her hair was slightly out of place, one side damp where the rain had settled. Her posture was stiff, like she was trying to stay composed and failing just enough to notice. People looked at her, then looked away. Marcus almost did the same. He had his own problems. Bigger ones. Real ones. He took 2 more steps past the bus stop, then stopped. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a sudden realization or a surge of emotion, just a pause. He thought about Eli, about the note in the lunchbox, about the question. You still did the right thing? Marcus closed his eyes for a brief second, then turned back. You okay? He asked. The woman looked up, startled, like she hadn't expected anyone to speak to her directly. For a moment, she didn't answer. Her eyes scanned his face quickly, measuring, deciding. I'm fine, she said. It came out too fast. Marcus nodded slightly. All right, he said, just making sure. He didn't push, didn't linger. He turned as if to leave again. Wait. Her voice stopped him. He turned back. She hesitated, then spoke more carefully this time. My phone died, she said, and I think I got turned around. Marcus glanced up and down the street. You waiting on a bus? He asked. I thought I was, she said, but none of these routes look familiar. Marcus stepped closer to the shelter and looked at the posted schedule. Yeah, he said, this line won't take you where you need to go if you're heading uptown. She let out a small breath, almost a laugh, but there was tension behind it. I figured. Rain tapped softly against the metal roof above them. Marcus shrugged off his jacket. Here, he said, handing it to her. She blinked. No, It's fine, he said. You're already soaked. She hesitated, then accepted it slowly, like she wasn't used to needing help. Thank you, she said. Marcus nodded. He pulled his phone from his pocket. Where are you trying to get to? He asked. She gave him an address. Marcus typed it in, glanced at the map. That's about 15 minutes from here, he said. Driving. Bus? She asked. Not from this stop, he replied. She looked around again, uncertainty creeping back into her expression. Marcus sighed quietly, then tapped his screen a few times. I'll call you a ride, he said. Her eyes lifted quickly. You don't have to do that. I know, he said. Another pause. She studied him again, more carefully this time. Why are you doing this? She asked. The question wasn't suspicious, just honest. Marcus leaned back slightly against the metal frame of the shelter. Because someone should, he said. She held his gaze for a moment longer than expected, then nodded. All right, she said softly. The car arrived within minutes. Marcus stepped out from under the shelter, rain immediately catching on his shirt. He opened the door for her. She paused before getting in. Not many people stop anymore, she said. Marcus gave a small shrug. Yeah, he replied. I've noticed. She slid into the back seat. For a second, it seemed like she might say something else. But she didn't. The door closed. The car pulled away, red taillights fading into the gray. Marcus stood there for a moment, the rain settling heavier on his shoulders now. Then he turned back toward the sidewalk. No name exchanged, no expectation, just a moment. Then it was gone. By the time Marcus reached his apartment building, the sky had darkened further, the city lights beginning to flicker on one by one. The hallway smelled faintly of old carpet and something cooking 2 floors down. He unlocked the door quietly. Inside, the apartment was warm. Eli sat at the small table, pencil in hand, brow furrowed over a math worksheet. He looked up when Marcus entered. You're late, Eli said. Marcus nodded, setting his keys down. Yeah, he replied. Had to take care of something. Eli studied him for a second, then went back to his paper. Marcus moved into the kitchen, washed his hands, and started pulling out ingredients for dinner. The routine returned. Simple, familiar, safe. But as he moved through it, something stayed with him. The bus stop. The woman. The way she had looked at him, not with fear, not with judgment, just with something he couldn't quite place. Recognition, maybe. Or surprise. Marcus shook the thought off. It didn't matter. It wasn't part of his problem. Not really. But somewhere, beneath everything else, the investigation, Victor, the looming 48 hours, a quiet thread had been pulled. And he didn't know yet just how far it would unravel everything. The next morning didn't feel different at first. The same alarm, the same dim light slipping through the blinds, the same quiet rhythm of the apartment before the city fully woke up. Marcus moved through it automatically. Coffee, breakfast, Eli's lunch packed with the same careful precision. The note folded into a triangle. Routine holding everything together. But underneath it, something was off. Not loud, not obvious, just waiting. Eli sat at the table, swinging one leg slightly as he ate, his eyes drifting between his plate and the window. "You going to work today?" he asked. Marcus paused for half a second before answering. "Yeah," he said. It wasn't exactly a lie. Not yet. Eli nodded, satisfied, and went back to eating. Marcus watched him for a moment longer than usual, then turned away. By 9:17 a.m., Marcus was back in the building. The lobby felt colder. Not physically, not in a way anyone could point to. Just colder. The security guard, who usually gave him a quick nod, barely looked up this time. The scanner beeped a fraction slower than normal, like even the system hesitated. Marcus walked through anyway. Upstairs, the office was already in motion. But this time, it wasn't quiet avoidance. It was distance. Clear. Intentional. His desk was untouched, but it felt like it didn't belong to him anymore. Marcus set his bag down. Before he could even sit, his phone buzzed. A message. HR would like to see you. Conference room B, 9:30 a.m. No greeting, no context, just a time. Marcus stared at it for a moment, then nodded to himself. Of course. Conference room B was smaller than the others. No glass walls, no view. Just a long table, neutral walls, and a faint smell of recycled air. Two people sat inside when Marcus entered. Linda Carver from HR, and someone else he didn't recognize. Mid-40s, clean cut, suit just a little too sharp for internal staff. Legal. Marcus closed the door behind him. "Marcus," Linda said, offering a tight, practiced smile. "Please, have a seat." He did. The chair felt harder than it should have. Linda folded her hands on the table. "We'll keep this brief," she said. "We've received a report concerning unauthorized access to sensitive company files." Marcus didn't respond. The man beside her opened a folder. "Specifically," he said, voice even, detached, "modifications made to the Maison Orla proposal outside of standard working hours." Marcus leaned back slightly. "I've already addressed that," he said. Linda nodded. "We're aware." Another pause. Then, "However," she continued, "new information has come to light." The man slid a document across the table. Marcus looked down at it. Access logs. Lists. His credentials. Again. But this time, there were more entries, more activity, more edits. Marcus frowned. "These aren't accurate," he said. The man tilted his head slightly. "They're pulled directly from the system." "They've been altered," Marcus replied. Linda's smile didn't change. "That's a serious claim," she said. "So is this," Marcus shot back. The room tightened. The man leaned forward slightly. "Marcus," he said, tone still calm, "we're not here to assign blame prematurely. We're here to understand what happened." Marcus let out a slow breath. "I wasn't in the building," he said. "You can check badge records. I left at 6.
"We have," Linda said. "And?"
She glanced briefly at the man beside her, then back at Marcus. "The records show a discrepancy," she said carefully. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. "A discrepancy how?" he asked. The man flipped another page. "It appears," he said, "that your credentials may have been used remotely." Marcus blinked. "That's not possible," he said. "Isn't it?" the man replied. Marcus leaned forward now. "No," he said, "not without authorization." Linda's tone softened slightly. "Marcus," she said, "we understand this is stressful, but we need you to be honest with us." Marcus stared at her. "I am," he said. Another silence. Then the man closed the folder. "Given the situation," he said, "we're placing you on administrative leave pending further investigation." There it was. Clean, clinical, final. Marcus sat back slowly. "How long?" he asked. "As long as necessary," Linda said. "And my access?" Marcus asked. "Revoked," the man replied. Marcus nodded once. "Of course." Linda slid another paper toward him. "This outlines the terms," she said. "You'll continue to receive partial compensation during the review period." Partial. Marcus almost laughed. Almost. He picked up the paper. Didn't read it. Didn't need to. This wasn't about the document. It was about the message. "You're done. At least for now." Marcus stood. No argument, no raised voice. Linda looked almost relieved. "If you have any questions," she began. "I don't," Marcus said. He turned and walked to the door, paused, then looked back once. "You already decided," he said. Linda didn't answer. She didn't have to. Marcus opened the door and stepped out. The office floor felt even further away now. People didn't just avoid him. They didn't see him, or pretended not to. Marcus walked back to his desk, packed his laptop into his bag, unplugged the charger. Every movement quiet, deliberate, final. He didn't rush, didn't linger, just moved. When he was done, he stood there for a second, looking at the empty space, then turned and walked away. Outside, the sky had cleared slightly, but the air still held the weight of rain. Marcus stepped onto the sidewalk, the noise of the city crashing back in around him. This time, it hit harder. Because now there was nothing between him and it. No office, no system, no illusion of control. Just him, and everything that came with it. His phone buzzed. A notification. Rent reminder. Past due. Marcus stared at it for a moment, then locked the screen. He started walking. No direction, just movement. Because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant facing what this really was. Not just a fight, not just a mistake, a collapse. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a question he didn't want to answer yet. What do you tell your son when the truth costs you everything? Marcus didn't have an answer. Not on the walk home, not when the subway roared past him underground, shaking the street just enough to remind him how small everything really was. Not when he stood outside his apartment building, keys in his hand, staring at the door like it might ask him something he wasn't ready to say out loud. He took a breath, then went inside. The hallway smelled the same: old carpet, something fried from 2 floors down, faint bleach from a cleaning job done too quickly. Nothing had changed. That was the hardest part, because everything had. Marcus unlocked the door quietly. Eli was already there, sitting at the table, backpack open, homework spread out in front of him. A pencil rolled slowly across the surface as Marcus stepped in, stopping just at the edge. "Hey," Eli said, looking up. Marcus forced a small smile. "Hey." He set his bag down carefully, like it still mattered where things went. "How was school?" he asked. "Fine," Eli said. "We had a test. I think I did okay." Marcus nodded. "That's good." A pause. Eli tilted his head slightly. "You home early again?" Marcus moved toward the sink, turning on the water, rinsing his hands even though they weren't dirty.
"Yeah," he said. "Short day."
Not a lie. Not the truth either. Eli watched him for a second longer than usual, then nodded and went back to his paper. Marcus stood there, hands under running water, staring at nothing. He could feel the weight of the words he hadn't said, but for now, silence held. Dinner was quieter that night. Not uncomfortable, not tense, just thinner, like something important was missing from the space between them, even if Eli couldn't name it yet. Marcus cooked anyway. Rice, chicken, something simple. Routine again. Because routine was control. And right now, control was slipping through his hands faster than he could hold it. Eli talked about school, about a kid who tripped during gym, about a teacher who kept mixing up names. Marcus listened, nodded, answered when he needed to. But part of him was somewhere else, running numbers that had nothing to do with spreadsheets. Rent, utilities, feats, food, time. How long before partial pay ran out? How long before the word temporary turned into something permanent? How long before Eli noticed the difference? Marcus pushed his plate away slightly. "Eat," Eli said, without looking up. Marcus blinked. "What?" "You stopped," Eli said, still focused on his food. "You always tell me not to do that." Marcus let out a small breath. "Yeah," he said, "you're right." He picked up his fork again, took another bite, forced it down. Later that night, after Eli had gone to bed, Marcus sat alone at the small kitchen table. The apartment was quiet again. Different quiet this time. He opened his laptop. The screen lit up the room with a cold blue glow. He didn't log into company systems. Couldn't. Access revoked. Instead, he opened the files he had saved. The copies. The truth. Marcus scrolled through them slowly. Numbers, tasks, names. All of it still there. Untouched, unchanged. Proof. But proof didn't matter if no one wanted to see it. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his face with both hands. For a moment, just a moment, he let himself feel it. The frustration, the anger, the weight of doing everything right and still ending up here. Then he lowered his hands and stared at the screen again. Because stopping wasn't an option. Not anymore. The next morning came faster than it should have. Marcus was up before the alarm. He sat on the edge of his bed for a minute, staring at the floor, listening to the faint hum of the building around him. Then he stood, moved, started the day. Same routine, same motions, coffee, breakfast, lunch packed, note folded. Keep going. He slipped it into Eli's bag. This time, his hand lingered longer, because now the words felt heavier. After dropping Eli at school, Marcus didn't go home. He walked. No destination, just movement. The city looked different during the day when you weren't rushing to somewhere specific. People moved faster, purpose visible in every step. Marcus moved through it without one. He passed storefronts with "Now Hiring" signs taped to the windows. He went into one, a small diner. The smell of grease and coffee filled the air. A bell rang softly as it pushed the door open. A woman behind the counter looked up. "You hiring?" Marcus asked. She looked him over, not unkindly, just quickly. "What you done before?" she asked. "Operations, logistics," Marcus said. She shook her head slightly. "Overqualified," she said. "You won't stay." Marcus nodded. "Maybe I will." She smiled faintly. "Maybe you won't." He stood there for a second, then nodded again. "All right," he said, and walked out. The next place was a small grocery store, then a warehouse office, then a community center. Same answers, different words. "You don't fit. You'll leave when something better comes. We need someone stable." Stable. Marcus almost laughed at that, but didn't. By late afternoon, his feet hurt. His jacket felt heavier. The sky had turned gray again. Marcus stopped at a corner, watching traffic pass, headlights beginning to flicker on as the light faded. For the first time since this started, he felt it. Not just pressure, not just exhaustion, something deeper, something quieter. Doubt, not about the truth, about whether the truth was enough. He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. Across the street, a child laughed, pulling away from a parent's hand, running ahead for a second before being gently pulled back. Marcus watched them, then looked away. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, scrolled through his contacts. News, numbers, people he could call, people he hadn't spoken to in months, years. He hovered over one, then locked the screen. Not yet. Marcus slipped the phone back into his pocket. The city moved around him, unchanged, unmoved, and for the first time, he felt just how easy it would be to disappear inside it. No job, no position, no voice in a room that mattered. Just another man trying to get by. Marcus exhaled slowly, then turned and started walking again, because even now, even here, he hadn't stopped. And somewhere beneath everything else, that still mattered. It was late afternoon when Marcus's phone finally rang. He almost didn't answer. The number wasn't saved, no name, just a string of digits that could have meant anything or nothing at all. Marcus stood at the edge of the sidewalk, traffic rushing past in blurred streaks of light and motion, his thumb hovering over the screen. For a second, he thought about letting it go to voicemail, about keeping the silence. Then he pressed accept. "Marcus Reed," he said. A pause. Then a voice he recognized immediately. "This is Emily Carter." Marcus didn't move, didn't speak. The city noise seemed to dull around him, like someone had turned the volume down just enough for the moment to settle. "I need to see you," she continued. "Not in the building." Marcus exhaled slowly. "When?" he asked. "Now," she said, "if you can." Another pause. Marcus looked down the street, at nothing in particular. "Where?" he asked. "I'll text you the address." The line clicked. No goodbye, no explanation, just a decision.
Marcus lowered the phone slightly, staring at the dark screen. Then it buzzed again. An address, 4 blocks away. The cafe was easy to miss. No bright sign, no large windows. Just a narrow entrance tucked between a pharmacy and a dry cleaner, the kind of place people walked past without noticing. Marcus pushed the door open. A small bell chimed softly. Inside, the lighting was warm, low. The smell of coffee and something sweet filled the air. A few people sat scattered around, laptops open, conversations quiet, heads down. And at a corner table, Emily Carter. She wasn't on her phone, wasn't working. She sat with both hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone untouched, her posture straight, but her expression different, less guarded, more real. Marcus walked over. She looked up as he approached. "Thank you for coming," she said. Marcus pulled out the chair across from her and sat. "You said it was urgent." "It is." A beat. "Then, I owe you an apology." Marcus blinked. "For what?" he asked. Emily held his gaze. "For the system you walked into," she said, "and the one I didn't see clearly enough to fix."
Marcus leaned back slightly.
"That's not on me," he said.
"No," she replied.
"It's not." She looked down at the table for a moment, then back up.
"Victor moved faster than I expected," she continued. "The narrative he's building, it's already spreading." Marcus nodded once.
"I noticed."
Emily's lips pressed together slightly. "He's positioned you as unstable," she said. "Financially pressured. Emotionally reactive." Marcus didn't react.
"Didn't need to."
He already knew. "They suspended my authority this morning," she added.
"That
Got his attention. Marcus leaned forward slightly.
what?"
Emily held his gaze. "Temporary," she said. "Pending internal review." Marcus stared at her.
"For backing me?" he asked.
"For disrupting the process," she replied. A small, humorless breath left him.
"Of course."
The cafe hummed quietly around them, the world continuing like nothing had shifted. But everything had. Marcus sat back again. "So where does that leave us?"
he asked. Emily didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out a thin folder. She slid it across the table. Marcus looked down at it. Didn't open it yet. "What is this?" he asked. "Everything you showed me," she said, "plus more." Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. "More?" Emily nodded. "I pulled internal records last night," she said. "Raw data, not filtered, not summarized." Marcus picked up the folder, opened it. Inside, documents, playouts, email threads, financial records. His eyes moved quickly across the pages. And then, he saw it. Multiple employees, different departments, different dates, all connected, all pointing to the same pattern. Victor. Not just one project, not just one deal, a system. Marcus closed the folder slowly. "He's been doing this for years," he said. Emily nodded. "Yes." Silence settled between them again. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was heavy, full of something undeniable. "So why am I here?" Marcus asked. Emily met his eyes directly. "Because internal review won't be enough," she said.
Marcus frowned slightly. "What do you mean?"
"I mean," she said, "the people reviewing this, some of them are part of the system."
Marcus let that sink in. Then what are you proposing? He asked. Emily leaned forward slightly.
We take it outside.
Marcus's brow tightened. Outside how?
Independent hearing, she said. Maison Orla's legal team, external auditors, neutral ground.
Marcus stared at her. That's not a small move, he said.
No, she agreed. It isn't.
And your board? He asked.
They won't support it, she said.
Then why do it? Emily didn't hesitate.
Because if we don't, she said, this gets buried.
Marcus leaned back, running a hand over his jaw. He looked out the window briefly, watching a bus pass by, people stepping off, stepping on, life continuing in small, ordinary ways. Then he looked back at her. And if we do this, he asked, what happens to you? Emily held his gaze.
I might lose everything, she said.
The words landed clean. No drama, no hesitation, just truth.
Marcus studied her. For a moment, he saw something he hadn't expected to see. Not power, not control. Risk. Real risk, the kind he understood, the kind that didn't come with guarantees. He thought about Eli, about the kitchen table, about the question. You still did the right thing? Marcus exhaled slowly. You're asking me to step back into it, he said. I'm asking you, Emily replied, to finish what you started. Silence. The cafe noise faded again, like it had earlier. Marcus looked down at the folder in his hands, then back at her. You don't need me for this, he said. Emily shook her head. Yes, she said, I do. He frowned slightly. Why? Emily held his gaze steady. Because you're the only one who didn't look away, she said. The words sat between them. Simple. Unavoidable. Marcus leaned back again, the chair creaking softly under the shift. He looked at her. Really looked this time. Not as a CEO, not as a symbol of the system, but as someone who had just made the same kind of decision he had, to risk something real, for something that didn't guarantee anything in return. He let out a breath, then nodded once. All right, he said. Emily didn't smile, didn't react beyond a small, almost imperceptible shift in her posture. But something changed, something settled. Good, she said. Marcus closed the folder and stood. So what's next? He asked. Emily stood as well. We prepare, she said. Marcus nodded. As he turned to leave, something caught his attention. A detail he hadn't noticed before. The coat draped over the back of her chair. Dark, simple, slightly worn at the edges. Familiar. Marcus paused, then looked back at her. Emily met his gaze. For a moment, just a moment, neither of them said anything. But something passed between them. Recognition, color. The echo of a moment neither had fully named yet. Then Marcus turned and walked out of the cafe. Into a city that looked exactly the same, but no longer felt like it. Marcus didn't go straight home. He walked. Not because he had somewhere to be, but because movement made things clearer. The streets blurred into each other, traffic lights changing, footsteps echoing off concrete, the low hum of conversations passing by without meaning. But inside his head, everything was sharper now. The folder, the data, the decision. Emily wasn't guessing.
She knew. And now, so did he. 2 days later, Marcus stood in a room that didn't belong to Sterling and Vale. That alone made it different. No company logos on the walls, no familiar faces sitting in predictable places, no quiet pressure to agree before the meeting even began. Just a long table, neutral walls, and people who hadn't decided yet what they believed. Maison Orla's legal representatives sat along one side, sharp suits, sharper eyes. Across from them, members of Sterling and Vale's board, their expressions controlled, unreadable. And at the far end, Victor Hale. Composed, relaxed, like nothing had ever slipped. Marcus took his seat slowly. Emily sat 2 chairs away from him, not close, not distant, just deliberate. She didn't look at him, not yet.
This wasn't that kind of moment.
The hearing began without introduction, no small talk, no attempt to soften what this was. A man from Maison Orla's legal team spoke first. "We're here to review discrepancies in the proposed partnership documentation," he said. "Specifically, financial projections, vendor allocations, and internal oversight." His voice was calm, neutral, but every word landed with weight. Victor leaned forward slightly, folding his hands. "If I may," he said smoothly, "I think it's important we establish context." The man nodded once. Victor stood. Marcus watched him. This was familiar, too familiar. Victor moved to the center of the room with practiced ease, like he had already rehearsed this moment. "For 14 years," he began, "I've served this company with consistency and results." His voice was steady, controlled. "Every project I've led has delivered. Every team I've managed has performed." He paused, let it settle. "And now," he continued, "we find ourselves here because of claims made by a single employee." Victor's gaze shifted, landed on Marcus. Brief, calculated. "An employee," he added, "who has shown a pattern of instability, who has struggled to integrate into the team, who, under significant personal pressure, has begun to make accusations that are not supported by the facts." The room didn't react, but Marcus felt it. The framing, the positioning. Victor turned slightly, addressing the room again. "We all understand," he said, "how financial stress can impact judgment." There it was again. Subtle, precise. "Raising a child alone," Victor continued, "managing expenses, trying to maintain a certain standard of living. It's not easy." Marcus didn't move, didn't respond. Victor smiled faintly. "And I say that with empathy," he added. The word hung there. Empathy. Used like a blade. Victor gestured toward the documents. "The access logs clearly show unauthorized activity," he said. "The modifications were made under Mr. Reed's credentials. The timing aligns with his increasing dissatisfaction with the project." He paused, then delivered it clean. "I believe we're looking at a situation where frustration has led to poor decisions." Silence followed. Heavy. Waiting. Victor returned to his seat. Calm. Confident. Certain. Marcus sat still for a moment, then stood. No rush, no performance, just steady. He didn't look at Victor. He looked at the people who hadn't made up their minds yet, the ones still listening. "I want to say something," Marcus began, his voice even, "before I talk about any of the data." The room stayed quiet. "I understand why what he said makes sense," Marcus continued, on the surface. A few heads tilted slightly, listening. "I am a single father," he said. "I do have financial pressure. I do have a lot to lose." He let that sit, didn't rush past it. "None of that is evidence of dishonesty." The words landed differently, not defensive, not emotional, just true. Marcus stepped closer to the table. What we have here isn't a story, he said.
It's a record.
He opened his laptop, connected it to the screen. The first document appeared. Clean, clear, data. Marcus moved through it methodically. No dramatic pauses, no raised voice, just facts. These are the original projections, he said, and these are the revised ones. Numbers shifted on the screen, differences highlighted. 30 to 40% inflation, Marcus continued, without supporting data. He clicked again. Risk model, sections removed, entire categories excluded. Another click. Vendor payments, Harrove Strategic Solutions. The names sat there. Visible, undeniable. Marcus didn't explain it right away. He let the room read it. Then, this company has no operational footprint, he said. No deliverables tied to these payments. A pause. Then the next slide. Ownership records. The name appeared. Dale Whitmore. Marcus didn't need to say it, but he did. Brother-in-law to Victor Hale. The room shifted, not loudly, but enough. Victor didn't move, didn't react. Marcus continued. Now, about the access logs. He pulled up the timestamp, 11:42 p.m. According to this, Marcus said, I accessed and modified files at this time. He clicked again. Building access records. Separate system, separate data. I left the building at 6:18 p.m., he said. The discrepancy sat there. Clear. Simple. Marcus looked around the room. You can verify both systems independently, he said. They don't rely on each other. He paused, then added, so one of them is wrong. Silence. Victor leaned forward slightly. Or, he said smoothly, one of them is being misinterpreted. Marcus turned to him for the first time. You can question interpretation, Marcus said. You can't question timestamps. A beat. Victor's smile thinned. Marcus turned back to the room. There's more, he said. He pulled up the emails. Different departments, different dates, same pattern. Instructions, adjustments, quiet changes, all leading back to one place. Victor. Marcus didn't rush it, didn't overload the moment. He let each piece land, individually, then stepped back. That's the record, he said. No conclusion, no demand, just truth. The room stayed quiet. Longer this time, heavier. Because now it wasn't about stories, it wasn't about sympathy. It was about what was sitting right in front of them, and whether they were willing to see it. Across the table, Emily finally spoke. I believe him, she said. Not loudly, not forcefully, but clearly. And in a room like this, that mattered. Victor's composure cracked for just a second. Not enough for most people to notice, but Marcus saw it. A flicker, something shifting. Because this wasn't supposed to happen. Not like this, not in a room where the truth was finally louder than the narrative. And for the first time since this began, the balance moved. Just slightly, but enough to change everything. For a moment, no one spoke. The room held its breath. The documents were still on the screen, unchanged, unchallenged, sitting there with a kind of quiet authority that didn't need defending. Marcus remained standing. He didn't push, didn't repeat himself. He had said what needed to be said. Now it wasn't his turn anymore. Across the table, Victor leaned back slowly in his chair, fingers tapping once against the polished surface before going still again. The calm he had carried into the room hadn't disappeared, but it had shifted. Refined, more dangerous.
He let out a small breath through his nose, almost amused. "Interesting," he said. The word landed lightly. Too lightly. Victor looked around the table, meeting each pair of eyes just long enough to re-establish something he had spent years building. Relationships. Comfort. Familiarity. "You're all very good at what you do," he continued, "which is why I assume you understand that data can be arranged." No one responded. Victor gestured vaguely toward the screen. "CTX matters," he said. "Interpretation matters. And most importantly, intent matters." His eyes flicked briefly to Marcus. "And intent is not something you can extract from a spreadsheet." Marcus didn't react. Victor leaned forward now, voice lowering slightly. "What we're looking at here," he said, "is a junior employee with limited visibility, attempting to draw conclusions from incomplete information." There it was again, the repositioning, the slow attempt to pull the room back under his control. But something was different now. The silence didn't bend the same way. It didn't follow him as easily. One of the auditors shifted in his seat. "Then clarify it," the man said. Victor paused, only for a fraction of a second, but long enough. "Clarify the vendor relationship," the auditor continued, "and the discrepancy in the access logs." Victor smiled. Polite. Measured. "Of course," he said. But the smile didn't settle the room the way it had before, because now there was doubt. And doubt, once it exists, doesn't disappear just because someone speaks confidently. Victor straightened in his chair. "Harov Strategic Solutions is a consulting partner," he said, "brought in to assist with specialized aspects of the project." "Such as?" the auditor asked. Victor's smile held. "Strategic alignment," he said. The auditor didn't nod, didn't accept it. He just waited. Victor's fingers tapped once against the table again. "Certain aspects of that work are proprietary," he added. The room stayed still, because everyone in it understood what that meant. It meant nothing and everything. Victor shifted, subtly. Then, he changed direction. "You want transparency?" he said, his tone sharpening just slightly. He leaned forward. "Let's talk about transparency." Marcus felt it before the words even came. The shift. The turn. Victor's eyes moved past him, to the board members, to the people who had been quiet until now. "Let's talk about how long certain individuals in this room have been aware of these vendor relationships," Victor said. The temperature in the room dropped. Not physically, but in a way everyone could feel. Victor's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "Let's talk about approvals," he continued. "About signatures. About decisions made at levels far above mine." A board member shifted in his seat. Another looked down at the table. Marcus watched it happen, piece by piece. Victor wasn't defending himself anymore. He was expanding the blast radius. "If we're opening this up," Victor said, "then let's open all of it." Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Because now, it wasn't just about him. It was about everyone. Marcus glanced at Emily. She hadn't moved. Her posture was the same, but her eyes, they were sharper now. Focus. Like she had expected this. Victor leaned back again, folding his hands. "Go ahead," he said quietly. "Keep pulling threads." He looked around the room. Just understand what unravels with them. No one spoke.
For a long moment, the entire structure of the room felt like it was balancing on something fragile. Because Victor was right about one thing. This didn't stop with him. And everyone there knew it. The auditors exchanged a glance. The board members avoided eye contact. The legal team remained still, watching.
Calculating. Marcus felt it, the hesitation, the instinct to contain, to minimize, to protect. This was the moment things usually collapsed. Not because the truth wasn't clear, but because it was too big, too inconvenient, too expensive. Marcus slowly sat down, not defeated, not giving up, just aware. Because this wasn't his decision anymore. It belonged to the room. And rooms like this, they didn't always choose what was right. They chose what was survivable. Then Emily stood. The movement was quiet, but it cut through everything. She didn't raise her voice, didn't rush. She simply stepped forward, placing both hands lightly on the table. "If we're going to do this," she said, "then we do it completely." Her gaze moved across the board, steady, unwavering. "No half measures," she continued, "no selective accountability." No one interrupted her. Because this was different. This wasn't defense, this was ownership. Emily took a breath, then spoke again. If there are approvals tied to these transactions, she said, then they will be reviewed, all of them. A pause. And if that implicates people in this room, she added, then so be it. The words landed harder than anything Victor had said. Because they didn't deflect, they didn't redirect. They accepted the consequence. Marcus watched the shift happen, subtle but real. The hesitation in the room didn't disappear, but it changed shape. It wasn't about hiding anymore. It was about deciding how to move forward. One of the auditors nodded slowly. "That would be appropriate," he said. Another voice followed, then another. Quiet agreement. Not loud, not unanimous, but enough. Victor saw it. Marcus could tell. Because this time, the smile didn't come back. Victor sat still for a long moment, then exhaled slowly. And for the first time since this began, he didn't try to control the room. Because he couldn't. The structure he had built, carefully, over years, had just cracked. And cracks, once they start, don't stop on their own. The hearing paused shortly after. Not ended, just shifted into something larger. Something that would continue beyond this room. Marcus stepped out into the hallway, the door closing softly behind him. He stood there for a moment, staring at the neutral walls, the quiet space that suddenly felt heavier than before. Emily joined him a few seconds later. Neither of them spoke right away. They didn't need to, because they both knew this wasn't over. Not even close. But something had changed, not just in the room, not just in the system, in the balance. Marcus let out a slow breath. "They're not going to bury it," he said. Emily nodded. "No," she replied. A pause, then, "But it's going to get worse before it gets better." Marcus glanced at her. He already knew that. He had known it the moment he stepped back into that elevator, but hearing it out loud made it real. He nodded once. "I'll be ready," he said. Emily studied him for a second, then gave a small nod in return. "Good," she said, because what had just cracked wasn't just a system. It was everything built on top of it. And once something like that starts to fall, it doesn't stop halfway. The fallout didn't come all at once. It came in pieces. Quiet at first, then louder, then impossible to ignore. 3 days after the hearing, Sterling and Vale released a statement.
carefully worded, legally safe, but clear enough. Victor Hale had been placed under formal investigation. All projects under his oversight were frozen pending external audit. Several board members had stepped down temporarily. Temporary. Marcus had learned what that word really meant. Still, it was movement. Real movement. The call came that afternoon. Not from HR, not from some filtered channel. Direct. "Marcus," Emily's voice said. "It's done." Marcus stood in his apartment kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, Eli's backpack sitting on the table beside him. "Done how?" he asked. A pause. Then, "Victor's out," she said. "Effective immediately." Marcus closed his eyes for a second. Not relief. Not exactly. Just something releasing. "And the rest?" he asked. "2 board members resigned," Emily said. "Others are cooperating. The audit is ongoing, but—" She stopped. "But—" Marcus waited. "But the outcome isn't going to change," she finished. "The record is too clear now." Marcus nodded slowly, even though she couldn't see it. "Good," he said. A pause settled between them. Then Emily spoke again. "I want you to come back," she said. Marcus leaned against the counter. He had expected it. Still, hearing it landed differently. "In what capacity?" he asked. "Not the same role," she said. "Higher." Marcus didn't respond. Emily continued. "Director of Strategic Integrity," she said. "Independent oversight. Direct reporting line to me. Full authority to review projects, vendors, compliance structures." Marcus let out a quiet breath. That was more than a job. That was a shift. "And the pay?" he asked. "Reflects the responsibility," she said. Of course it did. Marcus looked at the table, at Eli's backpack, at the small things that had kept his life moving when everything else stalled. "I have one condition," he said. Emily didn't hesitate. "Name it." Marcus straightened slightly. "No one in that building," he said, "ever uses someone's personal situation against them again." A pause. Then he continued. "Not their family, not their finances, not where they come from, not anything." His voice stayed calm, but the weight behind it didn't. "If it happens," he added, "it's reported, and it has consequences." Silence. Then, "That's not a condition," Emily said. Marcus frowned slightly. "That's policy," she finished. Something in his chest shifted, small but real. "Then yes," Marcus said, "I'll come back." 3 weeks later, the building looked the same. Glass walls, polished floors, the same skyline stretching out beyond it. But it didn't feel the same. Not anymore. Marcus walked through the lobby with Eli beside him, the boy's eyes wide as he took everything in. "This is where you work?" Eli asked. Marcus smiled slightly.
Yeah.
Eli looked around, taking in the height, the space, the movement of people who now, quietly, subtly, acknowledged Marcus as he passed. "That's big," Eli said. Marcus chuckled softly. "Yeah," he said, "it is." They stepped into the elevator. This time, the doors didn't feel like something closing. They felt like something opening. The event was simple. Family Day. Employees bringing children, partners, parents. Laughter in spaces that had once felt too controlled for it. Eli moved ahead, asking questions about everything, the buttons in the elevator, the glass walls, the way the city looked from that high up. Marcus followed behind, answering when he could, admitting when he couldn't.
And for once, that felt enough. They stopped in the main lobby on the way out. A new installation had been placed along one wall. Simple. No branding, no corporate language, just a single line. Eli walked up to it, reading slowly. "The truth does not destroy a good system," he said quietly. "Only the lies do." He read it again, then turned to Marcus. "Did you write that?" Marcus looked at the words for a long moment. Everything that had happened, the meeting, the badge, the silence, the fight, the cost. He shook his head. "No," he said. Eli tilted his head. "Then who did?" Marcus smiled slightly. "I don't know," he said. A beat. Then he added, "I just lived it." Eli studied him for a second, then nodded. Like that made sense, like it was enough. He reached for Marcus's hand, and Marcus took it. Across the lobby, Emily Carter stood at a distance, not watching closely, not intruding, just observing. The moment, the result. The man who had walked away from everything and then walked back in without losing himself. She had built a company over 11 years. Struer, power, control. But standing there, she understood something different, something simpler. The strongest person in any room wasn't the one with the most authority. It was the one who couldn't be convinced to stop telling the truth. Not because it was easy, not because it was safe, but because they had decided something else mattered more. Marcus and Eli walked toward the exit. The city waited outside, unchanged, alive, full of the same noise, the same movement, the same endless motion. But for Marcus, it felt different now. Not because the world had changed, but because he hadn't. And that was what Eli would remember. Not the job, not the title, not the outcome, but the choice. The moment when it mattered, and what his father had done with it. Because in the end, the truth hadn't cost Marcus everything. It had shown him exactly what was worth keeping, and what was worth becoming. If this story stayed with you, if you've ever stood at a line where doing the right thing meant risking everything, remember this: someone is always watching. And what you choose teaches them who to be. When Marcus stood there and told Eli, "No, I just lived it," that wasn't about winning a job or exposing the truth. It was about showing his son what kind of man he chose to be when it mattered most. Sometimes one moment of courage, like refusing to lie when everything is on the line, is enough to change the direction of your entire life, and someone else is watching you. So the next time life puts you in a corner, ask yourself what Marcus asked without saying it. Will you protect your comfort, or will you protect your character? Because that one decision might shape more than just your future. If this story meant something to you, comment 1 below. And tell me, have you ever stood in a moment where doing the right thing cost you something real? There's another story coming up, one where a single choice changes everything in a way no one saw coming.